Welcome back to Fresh Outlook, everybody. The king of the blues, B.B. King, died 2 weeks ago, and his loved ones, well, they are now singing the blues. No, they're not racked with grief. They are filing lawsuits and even making accusations of murder, saying the legend was poisoned. And now the man's death will serve as a reminder to the aging baby boomers and others that you need to make your end-of-life plans carefully. Yuck, who wants to do that? Not me, which is why people avoid it, of course. We will talk more about that in just a bit, but let me introduce you to the Fresh Outlook think tank, the esteemed Dr. Bart Rossi, a political psychologist, Elura Nanos, a attorney and lifestyle expert, Tom Lavecchia, a marketing professional, and Elura, I will turn to you. What do you make of this mess? I guess you try to plan for your estate. Your kids are going to be weasels and fight over your coffin, right?
Yeah, and the saying goes, where there's a will, there's a nephew. That's the attorney saying. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I mean, really, you can see it. It is very important to make end-of-life plans, you know?
But this man did. He had assigned people to do these.
And I'll tell you that, you know, many people, they look at a situation like this and they expect or hope that the legal system is going to look at it and do sort of what's best and what everybody thinks is the most fair. And that's not the way the legal system works with end-of-life plans.
Right.
The legal system puts at the highest value on what the dead person wanted.
Right.
Okay, whether or not that's the most fair, whether or not that's the thing that's going to make everybody happy.
Right.
So what's most important is that we honor B.B. King's wishes. And it's really unclear in this case. You know, he had a power of attorney, and he had this manager that was taking care of him and taking care of his business for a long time. So all signs indicate that this is the person that he wanted to run things. And there have been some hearings, and the judges have found no evidence whatsoever that there was any undue influence on B.B. King, or that this manager was mismanaging things in any way, or that anything was being done against B.B. King's wishes. So it really doesn't look good for the kids, for whatever cases they're filing. It really just does not look good for them.
Especially when they're throwing everything but the kitchen sink and they're saying, Dad was poisoned. Yeah. I don't believe that for a minute.
Yeah.
Doc, I know you deal with people who are in death's waiting room all the time.
Yeah, our business was mental health for the elderly in nursing homes. So my question is, well, where were the kids here in terms of getting a psychological evaluation, saying in effect that he was suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever it might be, and then indicating that there was some manipulation here? I agree. It doesn't seem like they're making a lot of sense here. I mean, it's not overly difficult to really declare someone not competent without capacity. And if he was in that state and somebody else was taking advantage of him, well, the kids could have stepped up and said, hey, this is what's happening. And we don't see that here. So that there's something missing.
Tom, look, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, this is a money play by the kids. So
because they're only going to get about $5,000 a piece.
Correct.
Most of the money's going to an educational fund.
Correct.
And you know, I'd start saying Dad was poisoned too. I think.
He did not trust his family, and he was obviously a very wealthy man. I think it was like in the tune of $80 million or something crazy in terms of net worth when he passed. So with that being said, he left only $5,000 per individual. And they were estranged, some of them, and they are saying, well, he was poisoned, and they didn't trust the manager, but evidently he trusts his manager over them while he was alive, so that was his plan. And typically they go with whatever the plan is, unless he has some proof otherwise. And I think the kids are SOL.
All right.
I just want to know, what is Lucille worth, the guitar? what is the guitar worth?
That's part of the estate, I'm sure.
I mean,
the many Lucilles he works with.
Well, here's what's really critical here, though. He was an astute businessman, and with that being said, he owned the rights to a lot, if not all of his music, and owns a right to a lot of his intellectual property. So this is going to be one of those states, like Marilyn Monroe and Michael Jackson, where it's not only just going to be worth this now, but it's going to peel off money for perpetuity. For a very, very long time.
I mean, they have to fight, right? They have to at least try.
Yeah. Right. I mean, is there a way to make your estate bulletproof?
I mean, bulletproof, not necessarily, but it's actually very difficult to get a will or a power of attorney thrown out. Because if you want to get a will thrown out, you have to prove that the person who made the will basically had no idea what they were doing at the time they made the will, or it was a true gun to the head situation, which is very unusual.
So slight dementia is not enough?
No, generally it's not.
Because then every will will be thrown out, because who by the time they're dying doesn't have slight dementia.
This is a state-by-state issue, but generally speaking, the standards are very strict. To get a will thrown out, you have to show that the person did not know that they were making a will, did not know what they own, or did not know who they are, which really means you could have delusions, and you could be forgetful, and you could have even slight dementia, but you could still know who you are and what you own and who you want to leave it to. So I mean, it's actually a very, very difficult bar to get a will thrown out.
Correct.
So these people, his loved ones, are basically up the river with $5,000 apiece.
I think so, especially considering that they didn't seem to bring this stuff up in a real timely way. I mean, with the allegations with the murder, we're seeing that they're saying that they felt that this person poisoned him, but it wasn't actually brought up until later, and they were kept out from seeing him for like a week. But they didn't run into court and say,
Correct.
I want to see my father before he dies right now," which you'd think really would be something that they'd run right into.
autopsy.
And I think it's just such a terrible thing, because B.B. King was brilliant, really. And he was such a neat guy and a personality, a real winning personality in a lot of
Yeah, he
ways.
was, yes.
And you know, he would sing and he would play the guitar, but he would never do both at the same time. People don't even realize that, because that's how talented he was. He would play the guitar, then he would mix his voice with the guitar, but he wouldn't do it at the same time. And he had these traits and characteristics that were so good. And to have this happen now, it's really tarnishes the whole, you know.
I had the pleasure of interviewing him about 15 years
wow.
ago. Yeah, at his nightclub in Manhattan, B.B. King's. And just a charming gentleman, just like you said, a real talent, who seemed to be in poor health even then. I'm amazed that he lasted as long as he did. I think he died at 89 years old. Tom, what was your thought about this?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that at this point, the kids are not going to get anything other than the $5,000, and they're going to probably spend a lot more than $5,000 each just to chase that money. They're better off just honoring his memory and moving on.
Okay.
I think.
And what is the stages for the family to try to contest the will? They go to probate court or something?
Yeah, they're going to go to probate court. They're going to have to prove some reason for throwing the will out, which is actually, it's going to either be that he didn't have the right capacity to sign the will, maybe that the formalities of the will weren't followed properly, something about the form of the will wasn't right based on the state that it was made in. All those things are really, they're difficult to prove. And then, assuming that they actually would win, which they will not, but even if they did win that, next we're going to have to see, well, what is the right way to distribute his estate in the absence of a will, which still doesn't necessarily mean that they would get what it is that they're hoping to get.
Correct.
So I mean, it's a long process.
And minor insufficiencies in the legal documents don't necessarily
It depends on what the
nullify
insufficiencies
document.
are. It
Okay.
really depends. I mean, if the insufficiency is the will looks great, but there's no witness, then that's a big problem.
Right.
But other things, maybe, sometimes if there are problems with the will, just a part of it will get stricken. So it really depends on what they find. I think they're hoping to be able to prove lack of capacity, but I mean, it's very difficult to prove that, particularly when they've already had hearings about his capacity and the judge has already thrown that issue out.
Doc, I know a lot of people are like me and are thoroughly convinced that they're going to live forever. But for most of you people out there, that's not the case, except for me. So it's tough to deal with these end-of-life issues. Tell me, from a psychological standpoint, how do you have that talk with mom or dad, or even yourself, to say, hey, it's time to put together a will, it's time to have a plan, it's time to have a healthcare proxy. These are all things that people need in an aging population.
Well, you probably have to put it out there a long ways, but say it might happen at some point in time, and just
So soften the blow.
Soften the blow and get through it. And if you see an attorney who's really good at this, an expert, they have a way of presenting it nicely, more appropriately. It's not the gloom and doom if you happen to see the right attorney. So some of these attorneys are actually amateur psychologists, I think, at the very least. And that'll help.
So you say, Mom and Dad, we're going to pick out some nice real estate, maybe 6 by 6 on a hill with a tree, and take them shopping?
No, but I think really a good conversation with the right attorney, someone who might have a little humor also, that might go a long way to helping the situation.
Exactly. Well, I even know in my own family, the wars still continue over. My father was a civil servant, left very little money, but the wars still continue among family members about who got what, and it's a shameful part of humanity. Do you deal with this in your practice at all?
I don't
estate
personally
planning?
handle wills, but I work very closely with many estate lawyers. And one of the things that a good friend who's an estate lawyer said to clients one time that I just thought was great was, she said that you have to take the focus off of preparing for death and put the focus on protecting all that you have created. And if you think about it that way, as an idea of taking pride in planning for what you've done and taking pride for preserving your accomplishments, then it kind of shifts the focus away from this grim kind of feeling and more to something that we can take pride in as part of life and as part of planning that we should really all do. And I think that was good advice.
That's a good point. And also the planning to live today. Because, as you say, too many people think they're going to live forever. They're saving their money. I don't know what they're saving it for. Some folks have a lot of dollars, but they're afraid to spend a dime. And you wonder, what are they thinking about? Where are they going? You know, and that's part of the personality that I think we need to focus on. How about living today and be as happy and content? I mean, you can be reasonably frugal, but you don't have to be ridiculous either. You know.
Exactly, and buy a few luxurious items if you're, of a certain age and you feel like you're not going to outlive your money. Spoil yourself a little bit. Look how the kids are going to act if you leave it behind anyway. So you can't take it with you, but you can wear it on your wrist, or you can have a little fun.
And think about, if you're a parent of children, you know that when your children are small, you put a lot of effort into making sure that the children don't fight with each other. Because as a parent, the last thing you want to see is your children fighting. Yeah. So if you think about it as really a parental move to make sure that you nip any fighting in the bud after you're gone. I mean, if you think about your responsibility that way, none of us want our children to fight about anything. And what you can do is make very clear plans and get what you want to be the reality so that your children are not left in a situation where they're fighting when you're gone.
I actually recommended to someone in a counseling session at one time that they budget an X amount of dollars that they had to spend because she had millions and millions of dollars and would not spend any of it, none of it. So I said, just come up with a number and spend it on yourself or your kids. Just have a good time. Could not do it. And would not do it.
It's amazing. I actually know an elderly couple. They're about 90.
Adopt somebody.
He worked for the railroad. She basically worked as a cashier at a candy store, and they were able to save $700,000, which is a lot of money for a 90-year-old couple. Yep. And like you said, they still won't spend it. Till this day, they need to go under rehab, have home health care, and that is frivolous. Fantastic. But it's that mindset that allowed them to save that $700,000 in the first place. Yeah. Exactly. All right, thanks to the Ebru think tank for this topic. We're going to move on to the next. When we come back, we'll be talking about FIFA under fire. The U.S. and even Switzerland are taking aim at soccer's world body. More on that after this.